As I mentioned, my name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. We are going to be talking about working memory deficits. That's going to be our main focus. What is working memory? What causes deficits in working memory? And some tips and strategies that you can start incorporating into your life today that can start to improve working memory. So now all of you have probably experienced this, and this is where I'd like you to use that raise your hand icon. It's at the bottom of the screen. If any of you have experienced this phenomenon, please do raise your hand. You walk through a doorway, you enter a new room, and as you enter that new room, you suddenly realize you have no idea why you are in that room. You know that you originally went into that room for some purpose, but once you get into that room, you have no idea why you're there. How many of you can relate to that? Go ahead and raise your hand. I'm going to wait for, oh, our numbers are going up quite dramatically here. So many of you have experienced that phenomenon. It is actually a psychological phenomenon known as the doorway effect, where a person, when walking through the door, moving from one location to another location, actually experiences a decline in memory. And they would not have had they stayed in one location. That's a great example of something that most of us have experienced, and that is a lapse in our working memory. So in order to really understand working memory a little bit more, let's talk about the differences between short-term memory and working memory, because sometimes we confuse the two, and there are very distinct differences between them. Short-term memory is information that's temporarily stored and recalled in the same format. So you go to a meeting and your colleague says, "Hi, my name is Sally." And you say, "Hi, Sally." That is you using your short-term memory. You remembered that information and you used it. Then Sally says, "My phone number is 828-1212." And you say, 828-1212, 828-1212 until you can write it down or put it into your phone. So this is information that's temporarily stored. It's usually only stored for about 15 to 30 seconds. This is very different from working memory. Working memory allows you to take in information, hold that information in your mental workspace, manipulate that information, and then give a response or complete a task. You can think of it kind of like your brain's sticky note, right? It allows you to work with information without losing track of what you're doing. So this gentleman on our screen right here, he's a good example of utilizing working memory, although he looks like he's having a hard time with working memory. So when you are cooking, you read your recipe and you hold that information on your mental sticky note, right? You hold the ingredient list, the steps that you need to do. And if you have strong working memory, then you can actually remember what steps you've already taken, what steps you still need to take, and what ingredients need to be added, how much of each ingredient. If you have poor working memory, then you tend to have to go back to the recipe constantly because you constantly forget the steps. You lose track of what you've done. You don't know if you've added sugar yet. You don't know how much sugar you're supposed to add. That's an example of weak working memory. Working memory, you need working memory in order to complete every task you do. Working memory actually powers executive function. If you think of all of the processes, right? Because executive function is a set of mental processes that allow you to complete tasks throughout your day. And working memory is required for many of those mental processes. If you think about the areas of executive function, it includes organization, prioritizing, planning, controlling your emotions, controlling your impulsive nature. And all of those processes require strong working memory and strong executive function, but of course, strong working memory. So let's look at some areas to determine if poor working memory may be affecting your daily life. Can any of you relate to this? And maybe you have some other examples that you can put into the chat box. But are you consistently losing your keys or your cell phone or your wallet? Do you get easily lost even though someone has just given you instructions? Or perhaps you have a hard time following a conversation because you forget what the other person has just said. Or maybe when you're reading, you find that you have to constantly reread the information in order to really understand it or be able to summarize what you just read. Or you miss deadlines at work because of your disorganization or inability to stay on task and complete each task. These are really common areas, and it looks like many of you are raising your hand that you can relate to this. Many of us can, but these are all examples of working memory and how poor working memory can really affect our day-to-day. Not only can poor working memory affect our day-to-day, but working memory is critical to school success. There was a research study done in the UK, and they looked at a variety of individuals that were at grade school level. They were elementary and junior high students. And they found that weak working memory was more indicative of struggles in school than low IQ. So that means that individuals who had weak working memory scored lower. They looked at 3,000 students. They scored lower on math exams and reading comprehension tests than individuals who had lower IQ. So some of you may be thinking, well, I've always wondered why my really bright child struggles at school. This study indicates that if you have a very high IQ and yet poor working memory, that can lead to school struggles. So let's look at some factors that negatively affect working memory. There are a variety of factors. So there's really no one answer for everyone. There are a variety of factors that may affect your working memory. One is ADHD. There have been many studies, but there was one study done in 2020 that found a majority of children with ADHD displayed impairments in working memory. And other studies have indicated the same results with adults with ADHD. So ADHD and poor working memory does seem to go hand in hand many times. And there can be several reasons for this. One is that individuals with ADHD, whether they're adults or children, have a hard time sustaining attention to the situation, sustaining attention to low stimuli, to their environment. So if you have a difficult time sustaining and directing your attention, then it's going to be very difficult for you to formulate memories. Also, highly distracted, right? Easily distracted is a hallmark of ADHD. And distraction causes weak working memory. So if you think about our mental sticky note that we talked about earlier, and let's say that on your mental sticky note, you have put on your grocery list milk, cereal, lettuce, and bread. So you put that on your mental sticky note, your working memory. You get to the store and you get the first three items, and then you overhear someone talking about a cherry pie. And you think, Well, that sounds fantastic, right? You're distracted now from your mental sticky note. You're distracted by that cherry pie. So you go to the pie aisle or the aisle where you go to get all your ingredients for the cherry pie, and you get all of those ingredients and you check out and you get home and realize you forgot the bread. So that is an indication that when you were in that situation, distraction caused a lapse in your working memory. You may see this in reading as well. We brought this up earlier with reading comprehension. And you may find, especially when you're reading on devices. Now, many of us do read on devices because we prefer it or because it's required. And unfortunately, devices are designed to distract us. So you may find that your reading comprehension is not as good as it used to be, or maybe your child has a really hard time with reading comprehension or has to continually reread paragraphs because they are distracted, which causes weak working memory. So that's one factor. ADHD can be one factor that affects working memory. Also, aging. Aging may cause a decline in working memory. It's actually among the cognitive functions most sensitive to a decline in old age. And many of us are probably going through this right now, right? Where we're watching our parents as they age, and we get to see firsthand how age really does affect memory. And it's really interesting. My mom is 90 years old, and she has great long-term memory, but her short-term memory and her working memory are horrible. And a good example of this is a couple of weeks ago, she called me at 7:35 and she had to tell me that she was the only person who knew the answer to the final Jeopardy question. That none of the contestants on Jeopardy knew the final question, but she knew it. And I said, "Well, what was the question?" And she said, "Well, the question was, what was the popular jacket worn after World War II?" And I said, "Well, Mom, I don't know that." And she said, "Well, everyone knows that." And I said, "Well, it's kind of unfair, right? Because you were there." And it was apparently the Eisenhower jacket. So she remembered that from her experience many, many years ago, as opposed or in contrast to Friday nights. Every Friday night for the past 3 years, my husband and I have done Takeout Friday, where we place an order, we have it delivered so that she has enough food for her neighbors for the weekend. And we do that every Friday night. We have it delivered because she's in New York and we're in North Carolina. And so she gets her delivery at 5 o'clock. She expects our call at 6 o'clock. And by 6 o'clock, she's probably, been done eating for about 15 minutes. And we'll ask her what she had for dinner. And she'll say, "Well, it was really good." And we say, "Well, what was it?" And she'll say, "Oh, some kind of casserole." Now, you and I both know that no one's had a casserole since the 1970s, right? We don't buy her casserole and have it delivered. It's never a casserole, but she cannot remember what she had for dinner. And yet she can remember that Eisenhower jacket. So why is there this decline in working memory as we age? Well, researchers believe that it is caused by distraction, just like in ADHD, because as we age, we are very easily distracted. It's harder for us to filter distractions as we get older. Another area is slow processing. As we age, we become a little bit slower at processing information. So if you notice, I know my mom does not watch movies anymore because it's very hard for her to follow the storyline of a long movie. But if an older person is watching a movie and they're watching the first scene, and it's taking them a lot longer to process that information in the first scene, and then all of a sudden the second scene has started, they're really going to struggle with remembering what happened in the first scene and tying that into what's going on in the new scene. So distraction and slow processing also affect our working memory. And of course, as we age, menopause or perimenopause does seem to affect our attention and our memory. 60% of women in menopause or perimenopause report feeling that they're in a brain fog. And that's likely due to a drop in hormones, estrogen being the main factor that causes difficulty with attention and our memory or working memory. Also, a new phenomenon that we're experiencing or a new contributing factor is COVID. And you're hearing a lot about this now, and it's termed as COVID brain fog. Now, you can think of brain fog in and of itself as slow or sluggish thinking, and it can be caused by a variety of factors. It can be caused by menopause, like we talked about earlier, or it could be a lack of sleep. But what we're finding now is that many people who have experienced COVID are having brain fog. And it doesn't seem like we really know why this is occurring. And we don't know how long that brain fog will continue for each individual. It seems to be very different for everyone. But this form of brain fog can affect different aspects of cognition. As they're looking at different individuals who are struggling with the effects of long COVID, they report, and these are individuals who were hospitalized, individuals who were not hospitalized, and also those who had very severe bouts of COVID. And they're finding that these individuals are reporting noticeable problems in attention, memory, and executive function. There's an ongoing study right now in Germany that the researchers are even finding that individuals who have had mild cases of COVID are experiencing this type of brain fog and this type of difficulty with focus and working memory. So there are a variety of reasons why you may be having difficulties with working memory. There's a variety of contributing factors when it comes to weak working memory. I was in a consultation just a few days ago, and the woman I was working with was saying, well, I don't really know why I'm having such a difficult time with everything, with my memory, with my attention. I don't know if it's because I am having a hard time because of my ADHD symptoms just getting worse, or is it because I had COVID, or is it because I am just going through menopause? And I said, well, it probably is a variety of reasons. There's probably no one factor that is the reason for weak working memory. There can be a variety of factors, but the important thing for us to keep in mind is that no matter what the cause, we can create new neural pathways. We know that through neuroplasticity, that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we are introduced to challenges and feedback, we can create new neural networks that are necessary for strong working memory. So let's look at some ways we can improve working memory. We've looked at all the factors that may contribute to poor working memory, but now let's look at some things that we can do in order to improve working memory. And if you have some other ideas or some other tips and strategies that you use that help you personally, go ahead and type them in the chat box so that we can share some of your other ideas that have helped you personally. Many of these on your screen right now, you've probably heard these suggestions before, right? So if you could improve your sleep. Because when you go to sleep, your brain is working overtime, especially when you get into deep sleep or REM sleep. When you get into that REM sleep, you are actually asleep, but your brain is working overtime. So this is a time where your brain is consolidating information. It is assimilating new information with prior knowledge, and it's trimming away old information, information that you do not use. So this process of consolidating information is helping firm up your memories, solidifying those memories. Also, exercising more. Exercising more is a really good idea because all of the research shows that when we get more exercise, we're more focused, we have improved impulse control, and we have improved memory. There was even one study with school-age children that showed just 20 minutes of cycling improved the students' memory, impulse control, and attention for up to an hour after that exercise. So exercise is critical to your brain health. You can, of course, use memory apps. And those memory apps, I'm sure many of you use them. You use your reminders that pop up on your phone. You use all of the different apps where you can write your lists, your to-do lists, your schedule, your calendar. So use those memory apps. They really do help you with your day-to-day. Also, you can use memory strategies like mnemonics or visualization. Mnemonics is a pattern of letters or images or associations that allow you to remember information. So one mnemonic that most of us have learned in the past is Roy G. Biv, right? We learned Roy G. Biv in order to remember the colors in the rainbow. Also, you can use visualization because when you can associate information with something you can visualize, or even if you associate it with an emotion, a feeling, that gives you a memory hook. So visualization often helps with working memory. However, there is one thing. If you truly want to improve working memory, there's a decade-long Stanford study that suggests you should stop doing one thing. So now I want everyone to think about that. And I want you to type in the chat box, what do you think that one thing is? What do you think the result is? Can you type in the chat box? Oh, I'm getting a message that my chat box is disabled. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize I had it disabled. Can you chat now? There we go. Excellent. Thank you, Amber. I had a feeling it was you typing that in to me. But yes, what is the one thing? And I'm so sorry I did not have that chat box on. What is the one thing you should stop doing? Ooh, many of you got it correct. Let's see. We have adequate sleep. What should you stop doing? Smoking, someone said. Electronics, someone said. Let's see. Eating sugar. Those are all good. Smoking. Yvonne said smoking. Maria said sleeping late. Sheila said sugar. These are good suggestions. Oh. All right. Many of you are typing in. Linda says talking too much. Tarina says drinking. Joanne says overthinking. So the one thing, and a lot of you did type this in, I didn't read all of them out loud, but the one thing is multitasking. You should stop multitasking. And multitasking has been shown to negatively affect working memory. And in today's, I should say, in today's attention economy, we are all guilty of this habit of multitasking. And some of you are probably doing it right now, right? Some of you are kind of listening to me, but you're also responding to your email, and you're scanning your social media, and you are writing your grocery list. How many of you, raise your hand or type in Y for yes if you're guilty of this at this very moment? Michelle says guilty. Stacy says guilty. Rebecca says yes, doing it right now. So many of you are saying yes, you are multitasking, and I will not take it personally because we are all guilty of this. However, when this habit becomes a way of life, multitasking actually negatively impacts your cognitive performance and your working memory. The researchers found that heavy media multitaskers significantly underperformed light multitaskers when it came to tasks that required sustained attention and working memory. So since many of you are multitasking, I'm going to say that again. Heavy multitaskers significantly underperformed light multitaskers when it came to tasks that required focus, sustained focus, and working memory. So that is a really significant thing to keep in mind. And why? So why does multitasking cause this? Well, it seems pretty reasonable what Stanford psychologist Anthony Wagner says. And he says reduced working memory occurs in heavy media multitaskers because they have a higher probability of experiencing lapses of attention. And that makes sense, right? If you are multitasking, you are not directing and sustaining your attention long enough in order to formulate those memories, in order to have strong working memory. And it's important to keep in mind that the more you multitask, the more you will experience that continuous partial attention, and it becomes a habit. It becomes a way of life. It becomes what you do on a day-to-day basis. I was talking to one woman the other day, and she says, I always feel like I have to do 3, 4, 5 different things at the same time. And my husband wants to just talk to me. And I say, well, can I talk to you and do the dishes at the same time? No, we have to stop. We have to slow down and stop multitasking, because the crux of the matter is that our habits directly affect our cognitive performance, directly affect our working memory. We have to practice good mental hygiene. You can think of good mental hygiene kind of like you think of good oral hygiene, right? If you have good oral hygiene, then you are brushing every day, you're flossing every day, you're keeping your teeth healthy. If you don't practice good oral hygiene, then your teeth will start to rot, right? They're no good to you anymore. And the same is true for our mind. We have to keep good, or our brains, we have to keep good mental hygiene in order to keep our brain healthy. So think about ways that you can keep your brain healthy and practice good mental hygiene. One is that you can actually start scheduling non-multitasking times into your day. Okay. So really become more aware of when you're multitasking and maybe just keep track of it, because you may be very unaware of the amount of time that you are spending multitasking. But if any of you here can relate to that feeling of, gosh, I was busy all day and yet I finished nothing, I would suspect you are a heavy multitasker. And that is the reason why you're busy, 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 but you're not performing at the end of the day. You're not checking off your task list because you're jumping from multiple things instead of directing and sustaining your attention. Also, break the habit of constantly checking your phone and your social media. I think there were a few of you in my list here that stated that they thought the one thing they should stop doing in order to improve working memory was checking their social media. And that is a true distraction, right? It's one way that we are not staying in the present moment. We're multitasking by constantly checking that phone. So maybe one thing you can do is when you're about to check your phone, just stop yourself and take a moment to look at the sky. Or perhaps you'll just take a deep breath, focus in on your breathing, change that pattern, change that habit that you've got into of constantly checking your phone every few seconds. Also, you can use mindfulness to train the muscle of sustained attention. Mindfulness is a great practice, and I know probably many of you here are practicing. You take maybe you take 15, 30 minutes in the morning, depending on your skill level when it comes to mindfulness, 10, 15, 30 minutes, and you're practicing mindfulness, practicing keeping your mind in the present moment. And that's important. And it may be difficult. And you may be thinking right now, like Janie said, with 3 kids, multitasking is how I can get anything done. And I understand, I do. But if you can take some moments throughout your day, so you're thinking right now, Gwen, there is no way I'm taking 15 minutes in the beginning of my day because I hit the floor running. And so just try at certain points during your day to practice mindfulness, to practice being in the now. It doesn't mean you have to sit in a quiet room and just focus internally for 10 minutes. You could be taking a walk. And instead of taking a walk and listening to a podcast, just take a walk. Focus on really feeling your feet as they hit the ground, right? Really taking in the sights around you. Or if you are, let's say, washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Or a big one, having a conversation with your family or your staff members or your colleagues. Make certain that you're not multitasking. You're not having a conversation with your partner and doing the dishes at the same time. Take a moment to just engage with that person. Okay. Let's see. Nikki, you have a long comment. I'm going to read that here afterwards. Tom says, wouldn't this also be critical for those of us with younger children, since ADHD is hereditary, and teaching them to focus on a singular task? Tom, absolutely. Like you said, no one knows what causes an attention difficulty or ADHD, but it does seem to run in many families. You know, with play attention, it is rare that we only work with one family member. Usually, Tom, we're working with at least one parent and at least one child, if not the whole family. So you are absolutely right when you say it is critical to start teaching your children good mental hygiene. Very good point. I'm glad I got my chat box to work. This is much better. Tom says, I like to go cycling to process my thoughts. I call it active meditation. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes in a quiet room where you're dreading mindfulness, right? It can be something like Tom's doing. He is cycling and he's just in that moment of cycling. That's a great example. Maria says, mindfulness is difficult and I have not been able to master it. And that's really true. It is difficult, right? Especially if you have a constant scattered mind. So Maria, I'm going to make this offer to everyone here. In July, we did a 30-day mindfulness challenge. And for 30 days in the month of July, every day we posted a new mindfulness practice. And it was a mindful craft. It was, oh, Nichelle, thank you. She said it was great. It was a mindful craft, or it was listening to music mindfully, all different types of activities you could do to practice mindfulness. So if you missed out on that, or you came in late and you only got a few days, just type in mindfulness if you're interested, and we will share access to you. So you'll be able to start that mindfulness challenge now. We'll give you access to all 30 mindful practices so that you can start doing those. And there are mindful activities you can do by yourself or with a friend or with family members for all ages. All right. Yep. Just type in mindfulness and we will get that out to you. No problem. Let's see. I had another comment here. Fatima says, I like walking in the garden as her mindful practice. So see, you can think about it. So it's good mental hygiene, and it doesn't have to be what a lot of you are thinking, where it's just sitting in a room and being quiet, right? Just practice doing one thing, not multitasking, doing one thing and staying in the present moment. So remember, working memory powers executive function. So it's really important that we look at factors that could affect our working memory and things that we can do to help improve our working memory. But we can get more sleep. We can use our memory apps. We can use mnemonics. But at the end of the day, it's important to get to the root cause. We must improve cognitive skills, because when we looked at those other factors, remember ADHD, the factors that were really causing the weak working memory was the fact that individuals with ADHD have a hard time sustaining attention. They have a hard time filtering distractions. As we age, it's processing speed, it's filtering distractions. So filtering distractions, sustaining attention, processing speed, these are cognitive skills. And cognitive skills can be pinpointed and they can be developed. Now, if you are thinking, well, I'm really not sure what cognitive skills are weak for me, and I don't really know what to improve or how to improve them. If you're interested in kind of pinpointing which cognitive skills are weak for you, what areas do you want to improve? And this could be for yourself, for your child, your clients, your students. We have a couple of assessments available. One is called Focus. Focus is a norm reference test of attentional control. It is computer-based. It takes 20 minutes. And at the end of the 20 minutes, we receive a full report that tells us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. We look at areas of consistency. We look at performance. We look at impulse control and your ability to deal with distractors, both auditory and visual. We also have an assessment called the Brief. And the Brief is a behavior rating of executive function. So that's more of an online survey. If you are 13 years old or older, you can do a self-assessment. If you have a younger child or student or client, you can do a parent assessment or teacher assessment. And these are a series of questions that gives us a good overview of your executive function on a day-to-day basis. So those assessments, they both take about 20 minutes in length. One is objective, the focus assessment. The other is more subjective, the brief assessment. But they give us a good understanding of what cognitive skills do you need to improve to get to the root cause of weak working memory and start improving those areas. So if They each take about 20 minutes, and then we need about a 30-minute block of time to review the results and with you and talk about a plan of action. And if you would like to do an assessment, then Tom's asking if there's a charge. Typically, Tom, the assessments are $50 a piece, but with this webinar special, they are half price, so $25. And that will include the assessment, and you can do one, you could do both. Each assessment is $25, and then we'll need that 30-40-minute block of time to review the results with you and really talk about those results and how these results are affecting you and what we can do to help. So if you are interested in more information about the assessment, or you'd like to register, because we do need to get some information from you on that individual in order to get you registered. They're norm referenced, so we will need a date of birth. So if you want more information, we'll follow up with you. Just type in assessment in the chat box, and we will be able to follow up with you. So again, each assessment will be $25 with a 30-minute follow-up, or 40 minutes. I say 30 minutes, but sometimes, as we get talking, it goes a little bit longer. So if you would like us to reach out to you about the assessment, go ahead and type in assessment, and we will follow up with you. Now, as I mentioned, so you're wondering, okay, what areas do I need to improve? And we can look at that from an assessment. But the good thing about the assessment is it allows us to pinpoint and really see the severity of each area, and pinpoint which cognitive skills do you need to improve. And then from that point, we can make a plan of action. And that plan of action can help you make a plan of action for your child's 504 or IEP. It could, you could start making some accommodations for your child or for yourself or for your clients based on the information you're provided in those assessments. But we can also make a plan of action with play attention, because play attention specifically addresses the area of working memory and all of the other cognitive skills that are required for strong executive function. And we do this in a really unique way. If you haven't seen yet, we do have, I have my blur on there, a body wave armband that you see on the screen. On the back, there are sensors, and those sensors monitor your brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And then that information is given over to the computer, where you're allowed to control all of our cognitive exercises just with your mind, or more specifically, your attention alone. And you receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not you truly are focused and paying attention. And as we were talking earlier, remember, those cognitive functions that are required for good working memory are sustained attention. Well, we work on that throughout, but we also have a working memory module. And keep in mind, while you're doing the working memory module, you have that body wave armband on. That means in order to activate your working memory module, in order to address working memory, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then your activity will stop, or the character will go in the wrong direction, and you have to focus back in order to continue. And the reason we do this is because we know the very first catalyst necessary for brain change is attention. Okay. And attention, you could have a great teacher or a great life coach, but if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual, then it's going to be very difficult for you to spark that brain change, to learn those new patterns. So that's why no matter what cognitive exercise you're working on, we make certain you're actively engaged. HJ says, how does the program differentiate between someone with ADHD during inattention and I think you mean hyper focus? So we have systems in place to help you as you move up into the intermediate and advanced skill options. We actually add in processes like processing speed, impulse control, and task switching, mental flexibility. So we're not encouraging hyperfocus. We're teaching you how to stay focused, be able to transition your task, and then get back on task. Now, when you put that body wave armband on, we're looking at your best ability to pay attention, and the bar is set there. If you're able to reach or exceed that level, then we raise the bar in the background. So you have to focus just a little bit more in order to be successful. So we're always able, no matter what your level, HJ, whether you have ADHD or not, we are always going to keep you at a challenging yet success-based level. Good question. So we're going to work on different areas, different cognitive skills like focus that we talked about earlier, your ability to direct and sustain attention. We're going to work on processing speed. So we're going to be able to address slow processing speed. We also address filtering distractions in all of our cognitive exercises. We thread throughout distractions, so you learn how to stay focused and filter out those distractions so that you can keep all of that information on your mental sticky note, and all of these other cognitive skills. So these are the different areas that we can address within everyone's program. And this is where the customization comes in, right? So if you do an assessment, then we can look at different cognitive skills that we can incorporate into your program in order to improve working memory. And our end goal, of course, is to improve executive function. So if you are interested in learning more, I'm going to have a few steps at the end, either a consultation or a Play Attention webinar that we have upcoming if you want to get a more in-depth look at the program itself. But for many of you who typed in assessment, that's a great place to start. So let's summarize what we talked about today. And I'm giving you this summary so that you can take all of this information we just reviewed from working memory and transition it into your long-term memory. So remember our high points here, that working memory is a cognitive skill that allows you to manipulate data throughout your day. Many factors cause working memory deficits. Remember, we talked about aging, ADHD, menopause, COVID brain fog. Mental hygiene can improve working memory deficits. Remember one mental hygiene that a lot of you are going to start today: mindfulness and stop multitasking. Working memory deficits are a major cause of lack of success at school and home and work. In order to improve working memory, we must stop multitasking. And we need to improve cognitive skills such as focus, processing speed, and filtering distractions in order to improve working memory. So I hope that all of you learned a lot today, maybe are taking away some things that you can start today to improve working memory, have a good understanding of, some of the factors that might be causing your lapses in working memory or your child's lapses in working memory. So there are a few next steps, and some of you are still typing in questions. So please know that I will go back to the chat box and answer some of those questions. But I know that some of you have to jump early. So let me just give you the next steps. If you want to register for an assessment, make certain that you type in assessment, and one of us will follow up with you to talk about the assessment and get you registered for that. There are two. One is called Focus and the other is the Brief. And we will follow up with you regarding that. If you would like more information on Play Attention, remember the assessment, when we do the follow-up, we'll also do a consultation. But if you don't want the assessment, you just want to do a one-on-one consultation to talk about your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you've already done a million assessments, or you had a neuropsych exam that you have a 20-page report from, and you just want to talk about next steps and what you can do to improve. Just type in consultation, and we will reach out to you to do a one-on-one consultation. Usually those take about 45 minutes, and we'll talk about your specific needs and a plan of action for your review. You can also come to our next Play Attention webinar. If you don't have time for a consult and you just want to do another webinar, our next one on August 30th is specifically about play attention. So if you want to do the August 30th webinar, just type in webinar and we will let you know. We will register you for that as well. Also, and what time is it on the 30th? It's the same time. It's 1 o'clock Eastern time, same time as today. So if you want to attend that, just type in webinar and we will get you registered for that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to see all of our mindfulness activities that we did in the month of July, there are 30 different activities. Make certain you typed in mindfulness so that we can get that information out to you. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back as you're typing this, and I should mention, if any of you here today are educators and you want to attend a webinar specifically for schools and educators who want to learn more about play attention, type in educators, and I'll make certain that you're registered for next week's webinar. If you can't attend, then it's okay. We'll get you registered because I know a lot of schools are starting right now. And if you can't attend, it's okay. We'll make certain you get the webinar recording. Okay. All right. Let me scroll back, and while you are typing in your remaining questions, I'll answer those questions. But for all of you who need to leave now, I really appreciate you coming today. I really enjoyed chatting with all of you, and I do hope to see you at a future webinar, or maybe I will have the opportunity to chat with you during an assessment or one of our consultations. I so appreciate your time and your attention, and I look forward to seeing you at a consultation or at a future webinar. Thanks so much, everyone. You have a good afternoon.